Hi, welcome to SBR Forum Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. Today is the Monday after the 2014 Conference Championship, so we've got our Super Bowl 48 matchup set. It's Seattle and Denver, and we've got our opening lines as well. And we're going to do our final opening line show with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com, who's had a great year in football at his site, as he predicted at the beginning of the year, and he's had a great year giving us advice and winning picks in our videos. Joe, thanks for being back with us for this opening line show one last time.
I know, but that hurts to hear it's only one last time, but it has been a great year. I'll miss doing it, but hopefully we'll do it again next year.
Absolutely. All right. Give a plug for our Offshore Insiders one final time.
Offshore Insiders, a fantastic year. We're still picking basketball. We'll be picking baseball. So just because football season's over doesn't mean the winning's over. Tracing my roots back to the Score Phone days, 26 years of experience at OffshoreInsiders.com.
All right, Joe Duffy, Seattle and Denver. It's an interesting matchup. Actually, I mean, every Super Bowl is an interesting, handicapping situation, but this one is particularly interesting for two reasons. First of all, it's got one of the most competitive lines that we've seen in a long time, right? It opened at Pick'em. It went to Seattle -1 at Pinnacle quickly. Now it's at Denver -2. And, this is the first time that we've had a Super Bowl spread of less than a field goal in quite some time. And the second reason it's so interesting is because, you're always in the Super Bowl matching up strengths against strengths. But here it's very, very extreme, right? The Denver extreme strength is their offense. Seattle's extreme strength is their defense. And I feel like that, extreme strength against strength is more stark than it's been, than we've seen in a long time.
No, it is. But also keep in mind that Seattle has that ability to control the ball so they can keep the ball away from Denver, much like San Diego did, where San Diego was competitive against them during the year. So they have that ability with Marshawn Lynch and with a running quarterback to keep Denver off of the field.
Right. And then another thing that's interesting about this one is that, most, obviously teams that get to the Super Bowl are good at home and on the road, but both of these teams have uniquely extremely strong home field advantages, neither of which will be at play here.
Yeah, no, Seattle most definitely has the greatest 12th man in all of football. And of course, Denver, with the thin air there, most of the sports teams in Denver for years have had a little bit more of a home field advantage, but you are correct there. And that's another topic altogether, because remember, one of our golden rules, do not handicap a neutral game like it's a road game for both teams. A neutral game is truly just that, neither a home game nor a road game.
So then another thing people are talking about is the weather. The general consensus seems to be that the less bad the weather is, the more that will help Denver, and that the worse the weather is, the more that'll help Seattle.
Right, but that is also an example of inductive rather than deductive reasoning, because the quarterbacks who have had great records in cold weather, Brett Favre always did, Tom Brady always did. Well, guess what? Their home games were played outdoors in cold weather. Where Peyton Manning, keep in mind that he spent most of his career in Indianapolis, which is an indoor team. So therefore, when he was playing in cold weather, he was always playing on the road. So I think that's going to be overplayed. But the bottom line is, when analyzing the line movements, yes, it will affect the line. Whether it should affect the line is another story altogether.
And let's talk about this line movement. I mean, it's pretty interesting. There actually has been a lot of line movement. Usually when a big game is opened like this, you might see one. Sometimes it doesn't move much at all from opening. Sometimes you see like one big correction and then it sticks right there. But this has gone both ways. It opened, after it opened, it went towards Seattle, and then it came big time towards Denver. Now it's Denver -2. I can't see this line going to Denver -3.
No, going on 3 is humongous. That is a key number. And I'll take it a step further, though. Remember that most sports books in Vegas, and well, maybe not most, but quite a few sports books in Vegas and offshore, you could have bet the generic NFC versus the AFC. And last week, you would have had to bet the NFC -3. Now, both favorites wound up winning. And now all of a sudden, it's the AFC team is laying the 2 to 2.5 points. But why is that? The reason is quite simple. The memory of the betting public is very short term. Denver looked extremely dominant in destroying New England, where, of course, San Francisco and Seattle went down to the final play where Richard Sherman made the interception. So the reason that the line is really skewed toward Denver is pretty simple. The Broncos were dominant in their victory, while Seattle won, literally going down to almost the final play of the game.
Right. I mean, just from what I've been reading and hearing, it does seem like the public is favoring Denver here. I'm not exactly sure how strongly, but pretty significantly, it seems.
Yeah, and part of the reason is, look, the knock against Peyton Manning was that could he win the big game? He did pass a big test on Sunday, but as an expert I like to trade information with, I kind of like the way he phrased it. He got an A on his midterm exam, but let's see how he does on his final exam. But yeah, I think the fact that Peyton Manning looked dominant in a big game kind of erased some of the doubters, and that is also a big reason why a lot of money is going on the Broncos.
All right. So do you think that there's going to be much sharp action on either side here?
I do think that the Sharps, there's a very good possibility that the Sharps will come back on Seattle.
And then the total is 47.5 or 48, and I have to think that that the public is going to be all over that over. I mean, they've loved betting Denver overs all season long. Here it is, a Super Bowl with the total is not that high.
Well, it is hard to say, and let me say this. I think one of the things you're going to hear a lot of over the next 2 weeks, and we've disproven it when it comes to basketball and football, you're going to hear a lot of people say, well, if you like Denver, then you really have to like the over.
Right.
Or if you like
Right.
Seattle, then you really have to like the under. Or maybe even vice versa. If you like the under, then you got to like Seattle. If you like the over, you got to like Denver. Don't handicap the side and the total as an either or, that you either have to go with Denver and the over or Seattle and the under. But still, at the end of the day, I do believe that they will see that you have a great quarterback and a very good quarterback. And more than likely, if it is going to move, it probably will go up. But I actually think there's going to be minimal movement on the total. I think it'll be 47 to 48, and it'll keep bouncing back and forth. I'd be surprised if it goes to 48.5 or 46.5. I don't think there's going to be big movement on the total.
Really, I could see this one easily closing at like 49, maybe even 49.5, or maybe they'll hold it at 49, but they'll be needing the under bad.
Well, I will say this. On a week from this Friday, once the weather, people become more confident
Right.
about the weather conditions. You are right. If there's no wind, if there's no chance of precipitation, if it's going to be at least above 40, the total will go up. But if all of a sudden we hear about high winds, maybe precipitation, then the total will drop.
All right, so getting back to what you said before about how, a lot of people are going to be, saying if you like Denver, take the over. If you like Seattle, take the under. The reason they're going to say that is because, the first thing you look at when you think of this game is huge strength versus huge strength, right? Denver's huge offense against Seattle's huge defense. Do you not think that that is the main handicapping factor to consider here?
Well, I do think that for Seattle to win, they are going to have to keep the ball. That if Seattle winds up punting the ball a lot, they're in serious trouble. So I think it's more so not just Seattle's defense against Denver's offense, but more so how much can Seattle keep Denver off of the field.
Okay, well, we're going to discuss this game obviously much, much more in depth over the next 2 weeks with you, Joe Duffy. Before we let you go, though, for all the people who are, doing their initial handicapping of this game, Denver and Peyton's offense versus, the Seattle's corners and their awesome defense. In a game like the Super Bowl, when one team comes in with a big offense, one team comes in with a big defense, who are you usually leaning towards? And in this matchup, who do you think will wind up having the upper hand?
Well, no, in fact, we could do an entire video on that. I always go, I think whenever in doubt, go with the better offense. But I do not necessarily measure the better offense by the team that has more yards or more points, because again, it does come down to pace. I still think the Miami Dolphins team that won the Super Bowl, the only team that went undefeated, and throughout the playoffs, they had the perfect ball control game with their 3,000-yard rushers, et cetera. So no, I would definitely go with the better offense, but the better offense isn't always measured by these fantasy football statistics.
All right, well, we will analyze all this a lot more in depth later on over the next 2 weeks. Thanks so much, Joe Duffy, for your initial thoughts. Talk to you again very soon.